Hello, Professor Toybox here along with Aladdin, and today I'm going to build the third and final side quest in my Agrabah toy box, in which a townsperson asks us to deliver some building material to a construction site in the city. The townsperson for this side quest is located in this corner of the toy box, and this is outside of the 3 zones that I had set up. So I'm going to set up a 4th zone out here, which I'll use to generate the townsperson when the player approaches this area. To save time, I've already placed the creativitoys that I need, so you don't have to watch me scroll back and forth through the list. And what I've got is a locator here, and a friend generator, and a logic gate, and a dynamic trigger. And this will serve to generate the townsperson when they enter this area. And then to set them up as a mission giver, we have a radar marker, a dynamic trigger, and a text displayer. And the rock that they need to deliver is here, and it will be placed on top of this locator when we're done. And I've got a radar marker and a dynamic trigger for that, so the player knows what they're supposed to deliver. And then when they go to deliver it, over here we have another locator and a radar marker, as well as a pressure plate to receive the rock when we're done, and a logic gate, and a treasure chest, and another locator up in the air. So those are the toys that we need in order to implement this side quest. And so as we begin, we'll start, as we've done before, with the friend generator here. And under the properties, we're going to set the behavior for the townsperson so they stand still. I don't want them to wander off. And we'll connect it up to the locator over here. And then we'll also use that same locator for our dynamic trigger. So we'll use a locator connection for that. And I'll set up the dynamic trigger properties. So the target is the locator, and the trigger distance is set to 60. And then on the dynamic trigger, as we've done with the other townspersons and the other quests, we'll do a new logic connection when entered by player any. Come over to the logic gate and input. Oh, not close. Let me edit that. I got in a hurry. We want it to input. There we go. And then on the logic gate, new logic connection on output. We'll come over to the friend generator, and in the Rise Against the Empire drawer, I'm going to scroll down, and I'm looking for Wooher, I think is his name, if that's how you pronounce it. He was the bartender in the cantina in Tatooine, so he'll be our townsperson that we'll use for this. And on the friend generator, a new logic connection when generated, turn around and close the logic gate, so that if we have 2 players and they both wander into this area, we don't end up with 2 townspeople. And then on the dynamic trigger, a new logic connection when exited by player any. Come to the friend generator and go down to the bottom and remove all. And on the friend generator, a new logic connection when all is removed. We'll reopen the logic gate. And that gets our townsperson in here for this little area. Now to set him up as a mission giver, again, like we've done the last 2 quests, side quests, we'll come in and do a new locator connection on the radar marker. And I'm going to connect it up to that same locator. And for the properties, I'll leave the symbol as a blue exclamation point. Beacon location will be the locator, and I want this active by default. And then on the dynamic trigger, a new locator connection. We'll connect it up to that same locator again. And under the properties, target, once again, is the locator. Trigger distance is 4. So for this one, the player needs to be right up next to the townsperson. to get them to talk. And on the text displayer, under the properties, text duration 4, text style will be the proposal. And all players can accept or reject the proposal. So on the dynamic trigger, new logic connection, when entered by player any, we'll come to the text displayer and we'll go down to the missions category at the bottom. And under here, I want them to say, "Can I ask you a favor?" And that's our mission giver. So on the text displayer, we'll do a new logic connection. When the text proposal is accepted, turn off the dynamic trigger, and also turn off the radar marker. Okay, so the first place I want the player to go is to pick up the rock. And since I can't connect this to the rock as an actor, it won't let me. I'll cancel out of that. That means we'll have to use a locator. And so we're going to do a new locator connection. And for this radar marker, the beacon type, I'm going to use a blue arrow. Beacon location will be the locator, and it's off by default, so we'll leave it that way. And on this dynamic trigger, new locator connection. And under the properties, we'll set it to be the locator. And again, trigger distance of 4. And that should be just fine. And then we'll do a new logic connection on this one when entered by player any. So when they get close enough to the rock to pick it up, we'll turn off that radar marker. And we're going to turn it on with the text displayer, so let's do that. So new logic connection on text proposal accepted, and we agree to help the townsperson. We'll come turn on that radar marker. And I also want to go ahead and have the dynamic trigger over there off by default, which means when the text proposal is accepted, we need to turn that on. And that means on the level starter that we put down earlier over by the palace, we need to make sure that that turns that dynamic trigger off. So on the level starter, a new logic connection on catalyze. Come all the way back out to that corner of the toy box. And we want to turn off that dynamic trigger. So when we load up the toy box, this will be off initially. And so if the player happens to wander over here and come up to the rock, I don't want this to do anything. And then once they accept the mission, then we'll turn on that radar marker. And of course there's nothing to prevent the user from picking this thing up before they need it, but what can you do? There's only so much you can control. And now I'm going to put that rock on top of that locator, so that radar marker should show up directly over top of it. Now the next thing we want them to do is to bring the rock over here. And so I'm going to connect up this radar marker to the locator that I've placed directly on top of that pressure plate. And on this radar marker, under the properties, we're going to set the beacon type again to be a blue, well, let's make it a blue ring, because this is where we want them to bring it, is the pressure plate. Beacon location is the locator, and again it's off by default. We'll leave it that way. And then on the text displayer then, We'll do a new logic connection on text proposal accepted. Not only will we turn on that radar marker, we'll also turn on this one. Okay, so then the player would go pick up the rock and bring it over here and then put it on top of this pressure plate. Now, there's nothing to prevent the player from standing on this, and so I don't want this pressure plate to do anything if the quest is not active. And so what I want to do with the pressure plate is a new logic connection when activated. So when the player stands on it or when the rock is placed on it, we'll come over to the logic gate and do an input. And we'll use the logic gate to drive the completion of the quest. And that means if this quest is not active, I want that logic gate to be closed so that nothing happens if I stand on that pressure plate. So we'll come over here to the level starter again. And a new logic connection on catalyze. We'll come back over to this logic gate and close it. And that way, when we load up the toy box, that'll be closed, and the player can do whatever they want with this pressure plate, and nothing's going to happen until they start the quest. Okay, so when they start the quest, on the text displayer, new logic connection when the text proposal is accepted, then we'll go ahead and open up that logic gate. So then they can pick up the rock, bring it over here, put it on the plate. That'll input into the gate. And then the output from this logic gate will drive everything else for the completion of the quest. So when the quest is completed, on output on the logic gate, we'll turn off this radar marker. And we'll also do a new logic connection on output. We'll come over to the treasure chest and spawn the loot, and this will give them their reward. And for this treasure chest, I want to connect that up to the locator that's up here in midair. And we'll configure the loot once again to use the economy, so it will reward the player with a coin, and all the default properties are fine. And we can use the treasure chest to close that logic gate so that when the quest is complete, anything we do with that pressure plate afterwards will not trigger any behavior. So on the treasure chest, we'll do a new logic connection when it's opened. We'll come back over here and close this gate. All right. And a couple more things we want this gate to do is a new logic connection on output. We'll go over to our sound generator and play our traditional end of mission sound. And that's already been moved under the terrain, and it's over here. So under the musical category, we'll play the fanfare. And again, that's the little musical flourish that I like to play to indicate that a side quest is done. And the last thing we want to do on the logic gate is a new logic connection on output. We'll go over to the action enforcer that we put down for the first side quest and have the player celebrate. And we'll have all the players celebrate. And I think that should be everything. So we've got the block set up, the townsperson, and the little mini zone out here on the corner. They've been set up as a mission giver. We've got the pressure plate set up with a radar marker and the logic gate there to drive the completion of the quest. So yeah, this all looks good. So now I'm ready to test this out, but once again I want to save my toy box first because I haven't set up a reset button like some of my other toy boxes. I don't have the memory for that, and I also want to exit out of this toy box and reload it, and that will cause the level starter to initialize the dynamic trigger and the logic gate. And so I'm going to do that, and I'll be back in just a moment. Okay, I'm back. I've saved my game and exited and reloaded the toy box. So we're ready to test this out and see how it goes. So let's head on over here to this corner of the toy box. And we'll see what happens. So as we approach, the townsperson should spawn in, and they do. We walk up to him and he says, "Can I ask you a favor?" And we'll say, "Sure." His radar marker goes off, that one comes on. And as we approach, that one goes off. We'll pick up the rock. And since we have to kind of walk along and carry it here, we don't want to go too far. So that's why I put it in that corner of the toy box. It's not too far from this construction site. That radar marker is on, so that's good. And at this point, drop the rock.
I'll take that.
There we go. So that radar marker went off. We have our coin, and we're good to go. So now the side quests are done. Next time I'll add the enemy wave generators and the toy box door for the palace dungeons, as well as a few finishing touches, and then we'll be done with this toy box for a little while, and we'll move on to the next toy box in this adventure. Meanwhile, I want to thank you for watching and for all of your positive comments and feedback on this series so far. A few of you have shared some great suggestions for saving more memory and improving on what I've built, and I appreciate that. I'm experimenting with a few of your ideas, and if I make any changes to the toy box, I'll be sure to let you know. Before I sign off, I want to remind those of you who are building this toy box on your own console or PC that I've got floor plans and logic diagrams on my blog that may help, so be sure to check those out. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet or signed up on my blog, be sure to do that so you don't miss the next episode. That's all for me today. I'll see you next time.